Hey there. So I know today's thing was take a selfie, and I did. But I've also been thinking more about how body positivity and accepting your body in this kind of very, I mean, not going to sugarcoat it, very like Eurocentric white supremacist world um, takes a lot of decolonizing of the mind, especially for a woman of color. And for me, growing up being Pakistani, there was this like expectation, and the ideal is to be incredibly thin. And I never was, never fit in that context. And then growing up, like kind of as an expat in the Middle East, like most of my peers were these very thin, very slender white girls. And I didn't look like them, certainly. And I didn't look like my cousins. And I had huge insecurities because of that. And, even though the ideal actually in most of the Middle East is for a curvier, more voluptuous figure, but like still thin but voluptuous. Um, I couldn't identify myself with that either because I wasn't thin. And so part of my whole like journey to acceptance and all that good stuff came actually at Wellesley. And for me, the first time that I actually went to the dining hall was transformative for me. Because before that, I just didn't know how other women ate. I just didn't know how much, and I didn't know what they ate. Because, like, the only time I would really see other girls my age eat was like at sleepovers or something, and you have that like extreme, like, let's all eat pizza, let's all eat ice cream, let's all just like, have tons of chocolate and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I don't eat like this. And yet I'm bigger than like the thin girls who are doing that, or there'd be other girls with like really high metabolism, and they could like they didn't have to think about what they were eating, and I had to think about it so much. I mean, of course, to the point that like it became a really big deal for me. And then I went to Wellesley, and I was like, oh my god, oh my god, like women can eat salads and like food and cookies, and it's cool. Because the other thing was like, all right, sometimes you go out for dinner and you'd be like, oh, like I'll have a salad with like just, water on the side. And I was like, I can't do that either because I'm hungry. So Wellesley was the first time where I could actually see around me um, examples of women eating healthily and being happy. And that was awesome for me. And becoming friends with women from all over the world, which I'd had been before, but in a different context. Because Wellesley, we have to really like give props to Wellesley. It's like its own little bubble. Just anything is possible. And talking about different beauty ideals with them, like what the ideal body type would be in parts of the Caribbean or parts of Africa, were very different than the mainstream white US culture. And then I stopped comparing myself to white US culture because I was like, wait, I don't actually, there are a lot of parallels that I actually, don't see with the rest of my life. So why would I be fixating so much on this? Um, and that changed me. So a huge part of this journey has been removing those connections to beauty and whiteness. And like I'm light skinned, so I never really had that I don't know. I was a bit of a self-hating brown person, but I recognize the privilege that I've had um, as like a light-skinned brown person. But still, I would compare my body type to those very thin white girls. And at the end of the day, like, I don't look like them, and I'm not comparing myself to them. I don't want to look like them either. I'm happy to look like me. I'm happy to look like um, other women of my background and ethnicity. And I think that like a huge problem, like I'm gonna call Pakistani society out on this, is I think as becoming more industrialized and urbanized and stuff, at least in sort of the upper middle class part of society, there has been this thing of like wanting to emulate whiteness. That's not new, of course. Like, you know, we're colonized for several hundred years. So, um, but I think that there was this appreciation for like curvy women, thick women, voluptuous women, certainly up until about 100 years ago. But now, in at least the upper middle class parts of like Karachi and like more, I guess, more urban centers, that's not the look. That's not the look. I think there might be a slight shift now, but especially in the 90s and 2000s, which is kind of when I grew up, like looking at role models at that point, there was no room for body diversity. Yeah, so that made me hella insecure. I'm still kind of like, it's uncomfortable when I go to Pakistan and I'm like so much larger than other girls my age. And yeah, it makes me feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, I realize that our life experiences are very different. And there's other parts of me that are really awesome. I'm not comparing to them. So why is this the be all and end all? I mean, it's still work in progress though. It still takes time and effort, certainly.